So, Mikey Mike, welcome. You look like you just
Going.
jumped out of the shower.
Yeah. So it's still morning over here.
Yeah, I know. I'm in Texas and you're in Hawaii, so it's morning and I'm in the afternoon. Man, I already took 15,000 steps today.
Oh, that's incredible. Doing what?
Just I'm taking long walks.
Okay.
That's my new health
Cool.
routine, just long walks,
Love it.
like incredibly long, as long
Do
as I can
you
possibly go.
feel, are you able to get much like are you productive mentally while you're doing that? Just kind of dreaming of different things or just,
Yeah, well, I always listen to either long podcasts or audiobooks while I'm doing it. So
yeah,
that's amazing. It feels like it's a break from doing that. So my new routine now, it's not really new. It's just kind of, it always gets tweaked a little bit depending on what I'm doing at that time or what else I got going on. So my routine lately is I still get up at 4, I read for an hour, I write for 2 or 3 hours, and then I walk for it was 2 hours and I'm down to an hour and a half now.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's a lot of I mean, it's a ridiculous routine because it takes up half of the day. And
Yeah.
after walking 6 miles, you know, I'm just kind of beat. So the afternoon is it's really kind of laid back, but it gives me this like Warren Buffett kind of thing. I know him and Charlie were talking about. They say like they play bridge and they have that old retired life, so they don't go get into something new and like want to chase some different new investment and
That's
take their
funny.
money out of this and put it into something else. That's exactly what I'm doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So hey, let's talk about the housing market.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, you're incredibly bullish and I'm incredibly bearish. I think it's about to crash. And what do you think? You still think it's going up?
I think it's going to skyrocket.
So you think it's going to keep skyrocketing?
I think so.
Okay, so that's what everybody. It's so funny because I feel like a cliche, and I feel like I'm just following on the bandwagon of folks that are saying that it's about to crash. It's going to be exactly like 2008 and all that kind of thing. But it's exactly the same thing. Like so few people were doing it that are doing it now were doing stuff in real estate in 2008. A lot of people, they've if you were in it in 2008, you either got out and got into a different business, or maybe you made a ton of money and you're not even talking to anybody about it. But a lot of people that are
Yeah.
talking about it seem like it's brand new to them. They weren't in it in 2008, and you're new since 2008, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was in it and got out, and I'm back in again. And so I just see the exact same patterns, and it's all the technical parts, all the reverse yield curves and all that stuff, but it's more like the sentiment. And I get a real strong sense whenever everybody's saying the same thing, especially like the news saying, yeah, it's
Okay.
just going to keep going up. And yeah, so what I'm seeing now is, well, first of all, you tell me why you think it's going to keep going up.
Oh, I assumed for the reason you thought it was going down. Everyone I'm talking to seems to think we're in a bubble and it's about to pop. And so I'm just shorting the popular majority.
That's great. We got the same viewpoint from the other side. Both of us look at what everybody else is saying and say, "Nah, I don't want to go with that."
I think a big part of it for me, there's no way I'd be buying in California right now. And I think a huge difference between now and the '08 crash is so I was really interested in Detroit right after they went through the bankruptcy. You could buy homes literally for $1.
Yeah,
I was kind of getting in a little later when those same homes were like $1,000. But the homes that I passed up then are now worth 100 grand.
yeah,
And so the reason I didn't step into it is they lost their job market. And so like who's gonna be in the homes? There's no jobs, there's no work. And I feel like for so long, like I don't know, I see the prices of real estate in California and all around LA or San Francisco, and it's millions of dollars for this crappy home on a little lot. And
yeah,
I don't know why you'd want to be there other than that's where the work is. But if those same employees can work from anywhere in the world now, I feel like it's going to change the market. So I think that California might look like an '08 again, but out here in parts of Hawaii that are I can't find any other city as cheap as this. I was even looking at like Missouri and Arkansas and stuff like that. It's just such a crazy market out here
yeah. Because it's going up, or because it's still cheap.
because it's so cheap.
Yeah, it's still cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's
this
one
is
of the
Big
few
Island,
cheap places
Hawaii.
left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is in only in Big Island, Hawaii, and
Don't
that's
say
completely
specifics.
yeah, because that's completely the basis of your whole investment thesis, right?
Yeah. So I'm still trying to get in a little more before I give it away, but I feel like as soon as the word gets out, this market will shift so fast.
Because of remote work,
Yeah.
and because you can actually be in Hawaii and be living pretty cheap still.
Yeah, and it's one of the most desirable places to be. I mean, I haven't lived all over, but as far as weather and yeah, we just absolutely love it here.
Yeah, and you should. The weather's amazing. Of course, it's Hawaii, and I've gone on plenty talking about the tough parts about living in Hawaii. The big thing I always
Okay.
say, and it's kind of silly, but I talk about you can eat at every restaurant in 2 months, and then you're done. You're repeating, and
Right.
if you want to go shopping, you're shopping at Costco, Walmart, Target. That's pretty much it. There's a few boutiques, but then again, half the people shop on Amazon and anyway, right?
Yeah, it's true. But I know that is a big deal, especially for people that for I don't know, living in the city. So I know my wife cried when they finally built the Target over on Maui. Just she was so overjoyed to have a Target. So
Just to have something to go get clothes and stuff. It's not even clothes, it's more like
yep,
stuff, like just little housing stuff, bath mats and stuff like that. It gets real
exactly.
hard to find. Like where I am in Texas right now, in 2008, they didn't even know that there was a housing crash
Right.
because the loan officers are so conservative here that they weren't giving out there were no subprime mortgages. They didn't give anything like that. They were still requiring 25%, still had the strict loan standards. There was nothing like that. What was going on? So they knew it was affecting the market, but they didn't have a housing crash. But what we're having
I
out
think
here now, we've got Austin, and Austin is just crazy. Okay, so some of the stats lately have been just insane. Like Austin has 3,500 housing permits filed right now that haven't started to build yet.
okay.
3,500 housing permits that they haven't even started to build. And so one of the things I was showing you about DR Horton, like DR Horton's a big home builder and they build these big, huge tract houses, tracts of homes. And so they're all over the country. And so what they do is they'll take a down payment and then they'll go build. Well, part of the down payment is that if you can't secure financing by the time they build and are ready to sell it to you, that they give you your earnest money back too. Not only do they cancel the contract, they give you their earnest money back. So now with the mortgage rates, say the mortgage rates get up to like 5.5, the people who could qualify, who were going to be paying about $2,500 a month, now their loans are going to be like $3,800 a month, which is exactly what happened in 2008. But instead of people getting into homes and getting bounced out of them, I think the mortgage rates are going to go up before people can even get into those homes. So people like DR Horton, big huge companies like that, I don't think they're going to be able to make it. That's going to be a humongous hit to their bottom line because they've got all this money out for their permits, and as they're in the middle of building it, that money is spent already. They've already spent it on the materials, on the workers, on the land, and so they're going to have to drop the rates, and it's not going to match what they put out. So I have kind of a twist in it. Do you remember that Champlain Towers in Florida? Did you ever see that?
No.
It was on the news. It was this condo that fell into the ocean. It just like
Oh, that's
collapsed.
right.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
I have this theory that this housing crash is going to be a literal housing falling apart, not like the paper, the secondary market, the mortgages. I think that's going to be a big part of it. But I think it's going to be literal houses falling apart because once we get into the middle, imagine your DR Horton. You've got a couple hundred million worth of materials, uh, contractors that you've paid, land that you've bought, permits that you've paid for. You get into the middle, and now all of a sudden, you have to make these houses affordable for people who were supposed to be paying 2,500, but now it's going to be 35 or 3,800. But now you have to get it back down to 2,500 per month of their payment. But their mortgage interest rate is 5.5%, 6%. the mortgage rate, as the mortgage interest rate gets higher, their payment gets too high. And so they can't qualify for the loan. So you have to get the price that you can sell the house for down to where they can afford it now that there's a higher interest rate. And so I think they're going to start using lower rate, lower quality materials. And this is a, all kind of a part of the whole, what do they call it? The supply chain problems and all that. It'll be a lot like that, to where you just use whatever supplies that you can get at the time. This happened in China, and they call them cardboard houses, and they fall apart in 9 years. Like, they literally
Right.
fall apart. They're just falling down around the people who own the homes.
Isn't that the purpose of having inspectors though in code?
Well, I have another theory about that. You've heard of the Pell Grant before, right?
Maybe.
The Pell Grant's a government program to help people get education. And so
Okay,
you
I
wind
haven't.
up with, yeah, so you wind up with people who get an education who couldn't afford it. And so a lot of people who get an education basically from the government wind up working for the government. So you got people who
Okay.
are kind of like the faux aristocracy, in my opinion. So they're like, maybe, you know, college isn't for everybody. We've talked about that plenty, but to get an engineering degree, I think a lot of people are getting engineering degrees that possibly didn't need to have engineering degrees. And so those people are going to go start working for the governments, and that's why they're going to be inspectors. But yeah, you are right. They should be inspected. I just, it's such a widespread problem. It's so widespread whenever everybody's mortgage interest rate goes up for new home buyers. Now, see, the issue before was in 2008 that it was people that were already in their homes had an adjustable rate mortgage, so it adjusted up after they were already in the home.
Right.
And so what I'm seeing is about to happen is it's not going to hit like the home buyers as much as it's going to hit all these builders.
So back in the '08 crash, did you have the same market with all these corporate landlords and funds buying up homes to rent out?
Not nearly as much, but I think that's been way overstated. I saw some
Okay.
statistics the other day that was actually, I think we watched that same show. It was on 60 Minutes. That fellow that was on there, he was saying that it's only 4% of all of the single family homes that are rentals. Was that right? Do I remember the statistic right?
Yeah.
Only 4% are corporate landlords. And so that's like the iBuyers who have gone at Open Door, BlackRock and all them. They've bought tons of single family homes and they call them corporate landlords. Well, that means that 96% are still mom and pops, late age boomers, right? So they're the folks that have they bought a house, then they had two or three, and they just have two or three rentals. And probably at this age, when they're kind of boomers are getting old, man. They're in their 70s, 60s, and late 60s and 70s. Boomers used to be what my age is now, like in their 40s and 50s. But boomers are actually they're in retirement. And so we didn't have that. So that's a whole new part of the landscape, but it's a really tiny part, in my opinion. Only 4%. That means 96% are still small operations.
I'm not sure if I trust the stat.
Yeah, especially because who the stat came from, right? He was one of
Yeah, and it's
the
just so
corporate
easy
landlords.
to
So what do you think? You think the
yeah,
corporate
and it's that
landlords are going to make a big difference?
I think there's going to be a huge shift towards that. So my perspective on the market is, so would you say there's a shortage of houses or do you think there's a surplus?
I think there's there's a fake shortage.
Okay.
So it's kind of like De Beers. Here's another statistic for you. In Travis County, there are 3,500 homes owned by Open Door, just in Travis County and Austin, Texas, that are not on the market. So they own these homes, they're not occupied, and they're not on the market. You've heard of De Beers Diamonds before, right?
Right.
So it's that famous from that movie Blood Diamond. They kind of advertised and showed how that company works. Is they go and find all these diamonds, and they're not technically rare, but if they keep all the big ones and the best ones off the market, then they make them rare. So that's exactly what I think Open Door is doing right now. So what they do is they keep them off the market They make the supply scarce, that drives the price up. People pay a high amount. And so whenever you have other cash buyers, like other corporate buyers who pay that high amount, now you have comps in the area. So a bank can't just underwrite and just say, okay, well, we think these houses went up in this value, and you should give a loan for this amount. It doesn't work that way. There has to be a buyer for it in the area showing a comparable sale, so that a mortgage originator can actually write a loan for that amount. And so they've gotten that price up. We're talking about how the prices are going up, the prices are going up. But I think it's artificially inflated because they've kept a lot of the product off of the market. So that's driven up the demand so much that the price is higher than it probably should be. But there's another part of that. Rents and prices have been low for a long time, more rents than prices. The home prices have been a little bit low, but rents have been like 20-30% below what they should have been for like the past 10 years. And
Interesting.
I know nobody likes to hear that, because we're like, well, the rent shouldn't be that high, and landlords, and fight the power and all that kind of thing. But really, if you start looking at the economy, the rents are lower than they should be for how long they've been as low as they have been. And that's been because of the low interest rates that have been kept that low.
Got it. That makes sense.
So you were about to tell me what you think, though.
And then I'm also curious on your thoughts of, I don't know, so like the US dollar losing reserve status and all the inflation and printing, and kind of where you think that's going.
Oh, I'm right in the middle of Ray Dalio's book right now. It's called Why Nations Succeed and Fail. And he talks about that just incessantly. And so, yeah, it sure does seem from the position that we're in the long-term debt cycle. We're at the end of the long-term debt cycle, and so that means that usually there's a change at the end of that cycle. There's a change in the reserve currency. The last time was we actually changed it and kept it from gold and turned it over to the petrodollar. So the Bretton Woods Accord in, what was that, 45? Is that right? I don't know if I remember that date right, but the Bretton Woods Accord took America off the gold dollar and kind of created the petrodollar. And so the really interesting thing that's happened lately has been China offering to buy from Saudi Arabia in Chinese currency. It's yuan, isn't it? In Chinese yuan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, the petrodollar is dead already. And so Russia's selling their oil direct and their currency as well. And yeah, a lot's changing fast with that.
Really fast. So what happens whenever currency devalues is the hard assets gain in value, right?
Right.
Well, that's real estate.
Yeah,
But
I
the real
agree.
estate, but the real estate, the value is underwritten by a mortgage that can be written for it, which is written in the fiat dollars.
Which is why the homes would go up in value, correct?
They go up in value, but they're being paid for by a mortgage. That mortgage is still tied to the dollar. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
It goes up in comparison, but it's not really a higher value. And are you getting it? You see what
Yeah.
I'm
So
saying?
compared to gold, I don't think housing's going up, but compared to the dollar, I think it's going to skyrocket. Especially in specific areas. There's no way I'd be buying a tiny home for 4 million in California right now, when you could get a significantly nicer home in Maui or other parts of Hawaii. And then there's the cheaper parts of Hawaii where it's just insane. And I feel like, yeah, that's why I'm still kind of betting on the pricing going up in those areas.
Can we talk about your bet that you're making with your what you got going on?
Yes, so right now I'm just trying to get as much as I can under contract, hoping the American dollar stays on the track it's been on.
Yeah.
And so it's, yeah, but we'll see kind of where that leads.
And so you've actually been able to put together a real estate investment fund.
Yeah, so that's kind of on the side. It's still pretty small right now.
But I mean, one round of funding, you give the return, and I bet you there's going to be a larger round of funding coming right behind it.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm still kind of playing with it's a lot of work for not very much money unless your fund is of significant size. And I I'm kind of building up the groundwork and reputation and all that for it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's at least 5, 10 years down the road of having a more significant fund.
Well, you got to start now to get it in time, 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, I've heard about a bunch of real estate investors that are getting out of, well, not necessarily getting out of real estate, but they're pulling out some equity and getting into buying small businesses,
Okay.
like real small, like a laundromat, or
Interesting.
like, or like hair salons, just like some small cash businesses that are kind of repeat revenue businesses. And they're just using kind of the same metrics that we use in real estate and looking at the cash flow. And if you can get one, so if you can do an apartment building with a whole bunch of people and you can syndicate it and you can buy a 5 or 10 or $20 million apartment building with a big group of people that put in 50,000 or 250,000 each, you can wind up at the end of it making the same amount of money by owning 2 or 3 laundromats.
I'd prefer to own the building the laundromat's renting from.
Yeah, that's
That
true.
building that building's going to be there 50 years from now, but the laundromat's going to change names 100 times during that time.
Yeah, that's true. The kind of concept is that there's a ton of people that are in that boomer group that I was talking about in their 60s and 70s, and they want to hand off their business to their kids, but actually they kind of did pretty well throughout their lives, so they gave their kids a good education, and their kids are like, well, I'm an attorney, Dad. I'm a doctor over here in this other town. I don't want to go move to the little town where you live and run, these 2 laundromats you got and your 5 vending machines and your 2 liquor stores, and
Right.
there's a lot of businesses that are up for grabs where people want to retire. They're in their 60s and they're like, if I can't find somebody to buy this business or take it over, look, I'll even just give it to someone in the family. And if I can't find someone to take it over, I guess I'm just going to close it down. So there are a lot of those on the market right now. Mobile homes and small apartment buildings have been the really hot one for the past, I don't know, at least 10 years. Mobile home parks have been a really hot investment for a while, and they had that same profile. They had the mom and pop kind of feel. They just been running it pretty cheap for a long time, and they just want to sell out and they just want to get out of that business and have their cash. And so there's a bunch of small businesses that are out there, and that seems to be like a new trend.
Interesting. Yeah, and I know so with COVID, especially the tourism industries, those completely tanked. I know a lot of people that had businesses where they're like, I'd pay someone to take my business from me. Whereas before they were the leader in their market, there's no way anyone could compete, and there's no way they would ever let it go. And it's just interesting to see how quickly that can switch.
Yeah, you just take away the customers for a year or 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely take them away, make it illegal to
Yeah.
run your business.
All right. So,
Well, can we talk a little bit more about your fund? Because
um,
you have a specific thesis in your area. Can you talk about it a little bit?
yeah, so the fund is like a smaller part of what I'm doing. So I maybe have 3 different companies. So one is doing like a rental portfolio, one is doing flips, and then the other is the fund. So all I'm doing with the fund is buying empty plots of land, kind of fixing it up, and then flipping those just because it's really quick and cheap. And so this fund, the first round that we're doing, it's only going to be like a 1 year long horizon. And so I just that's really hard to do with actual homes. And so land was just the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, they say buy dirt.
Yep.
That's been my thesis for years. Just buy dirt, no toilets, no tenants, no termites. And so yeah, it's been really, really good. I'm actually looking to reposition some of that to some mainland properties. I've been looking at a bunch of stuff in Colorado lately.
Interesting. What's going on there?
Just land that you can, same sort of thing I was doing there. I back to those boomers, back to the folks that bought some land for investment. They've held it these years. They really didn't do anything. They hunted on it a little bit. They did their little RVing on it and their ATVing on it, and they're done. And they really just don't want to hold on to it and keep paying the taxes. And you get to your 70s, your late 70s especially, and it gets tough to pack up the RV, pack up the ATV, and the kids got their own kids, so they're not out there fishing at the lake anymore, and they just feel like selling it. So we'll just have to see. It's kind of a hard time to be buying them right now, but if what I think is going to happen is going to happen, then the prices will go down, and those really don't get affected by mortgages, but they get affected by what else is going on in the economy. So those type of folks don't really have like an investment thesis or anything like that. They just kind of watch the news and they're like, well, the economy's down, so we'll sell it for cheaper, or they'll listen to the realtor. A lot of times you got to remember, tons of folks just do what the realtor tells them.
It's true.
They don't have any idea what's really any value. They don't run the comps themselves. They don't go, even though tons of people do go look on Zillow or go, you can even go on the county website and kind of run your own comps. A lot of folks don't. Like tons of folks just don't even, they're not into that, or they don't trust their own knowledge of it. Or, they have their own business. They have their own stuff going on. They might be a nursing home administrator. So they're not paying attention to real estate and what's going on in the economy and the market. They're paying attention to like Medicare regulations and what's happening with that and how that affects them and their business. It's just real estate's not their business.
Yeah. And when you're paying someone 6 or 7% to sell your home, you have to trust them to be the expert.
Which is pretty sad because you can go get a license in what, 2-3 weeks?
Yep.
I get in trouble saying that kind of thing. Plenty of realtors get on my case, but sorry, it's the truth.
Having the license doesn't make you a good realtor.
Yeah, for sure. So what else has been going on in Hawaii? You've got your flips, the land flips. You've been doing housing flips as well.
Yeah, so housing flips and then housing rentals. And so like my hope is to create a real estate course soon. And so with it, I want to show more of the creative financing side, because I've read so many books out on it, and it's just like, okay, here's stuff that like in theory works, but nobody can actually go and make that happen. And so I'm trying to do, I don't know, like 7 to 10 different styles of creative financing. And so every deal I've been doing is completely different, whether it's a rental or a flip. So I've just kind of been having fun with that and being creative.
Can you tell me a story about some of the different financing?
Um, yeah, so like the most recent one we got, it was just someone posted it as cash only. And so it's around $200,000, might be worth around 300,000. A previous tenant trashed it, and the landowner doesn't live here in Hawaii. And so I was able to come in, and instead of paying 200 cash, I was like, well, how about you just hold the deed, and then you pay for the renovation costs, and I'll just come in and do the work, and then we split the profit. And so we set that up. So we're doing that this month. But it might be like 30 or 40,000 profit for, it's not too much work. It's just being able to kind of make the deal and bring stuff together for it.
So what do you say to people that go, well, that's kind of dangerous for you? You don't have any kind of like stake in the game, right?
Yeah, agreed. It's dangerous. And at the end of the day, like I might lose a month of labor. It's, I don't know, not the end of the world.
Well, that's the other thing that I was going to say is you don't have a ton of skin in the game.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's why they're willing to do it, because they know that you're basically, you put in all the legwork, and they get to benefit off it financially as well.
Right.
Because they can't put in the legwork right now.
Yeah, correct. And hiring contractors, everyone's so far behind right now that for her to be her own general contractor and hire out each thing that needs to be done, it would just, it'd take at least 6 months probably right now.
Yeah. Hey, so we're going to see each other at the convention next week, right?
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. So why are we going? What's the main thing you're wanting from it?
Well, that's a good question. It's called the Noteworthy Convention, and I've been getting interested in notes, and a lot of people get interested in buying notes, and I'm more interested in selling notes. And so one of the things that I've been coming up against is it's real easy for me to set up a note for a piece of land, because Dodd-Frank and the Truth in Lending Act and the Department of Financial Institutions, they don't regulate mortgages. They don't regulate anything on just raw land with no structure, no dwelling. And so what I've been doing for the past 8 years or so, there's no regulation. There's no problem with that. And one of the things that came about from 2008 and kind of caused 2008 was easy lending, too easy lending. And so that gets a really bad rap, being like an easy lender, a predatory lender, they call it. And so I want to go figure out from these folks at this convention. I want to go learn how to develop loans for properties and underwrite them correctly and legally within Dodd-Frank, and find mortgage originators that can originate legal owner finance loans.
Interesting.
So that's what I'm going for.
Yes. So I don't understand half of what you just said.
Okay. So
as far as doing them legally, you're basically working with a mortgage broker, or you would be the company still giving out the loans, but now
I don't know.
legal?
I gotta go figure all that out. So I don't understand all that for housing. I sort of understand it, but I know that there's a lot that's changed since before 2008. And owner finance is not as easy as it was before. It's a lot more sleazy actually now. From what I've found, there's tons of people that are doing it just kind of illegally, and they'll do it and say, well, you're allowed to do 3 in a year. So I do 3 in a year in this company and then 3 in a year in that company. And there's a bunch of kind of sleazy ways to do it like that. Or they'll say, okay, well, I'm just giving a mortgage on they'll sell a piece of land with a mobile home on it. And they'll say, well, I'm just giving a CFD, a contract for deed, which is a mortgage contract, a note, a loan. I'm giving you an owner finance loan for the land and the down payment that you paid for the mobile home. But they just kind of do it in these tricky ways. And I don't want to do anything tricky like that at all. I'm trying to set it up to where it's totally, completely legit. And so where a lot of these people are coming to learn how to sell or how to buy notes, I'm coming to learn how to set them up and sell them to these people.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I love conventions anyway. Conventions and seminars and classes and all that kind of thing. I love it. Because the last one I went to, I found an investor and he gave us $300,000 and we turned that into almost $1.5 million within about 9-10 months. So, I mean, these seminars can really be good connectors. I love connecting with people. So that's one of the main reasons I want to go.
That's
Why
awesome.
do you want to go?
Just to learn what I know nothing of. So no, I think it understanding more of the financing side just opens a lot more doors for real estate and allows you to be creative in other ways. And so yeah, if it's easy to set up and sell notes, I think that's another great tool to have.
Yeah.
Also, I think since I'm still kind of in the beginning stages of stuff, I think as far as connecting with people, I think there's a lot of people buying and selling notes there that are selling properties with creative financing too.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, it's just, yeah, making connections on both ends.
Yeah, putting together, here's another thing I hadn't told you about yet. So putting together that kind of buying the boomer business idea with notes. So one of the big problems is you can't owner finance houses because that falls under the Dodd-Frank and the Dodd-Frank Act and the Truth in Lending. That came after 2008, and it was a response to Wall Street being too loose with lending. So we'll back up and teach you a little bit about that. So Wall Street was just being crazy, saying they had these things called ninja loans, no income, no job, no problem. Yeah, just fill out an application, tell us what you make. You know, it's okay. Just tell us what you make, whatever it is, just put it on the form. And so that was the thing. There's been plenty of movies and plenty of people talk about that for years. And that was incredibly popular. So Dodd-Frank makes all of that illegal. You have to have a licensed mortgage originator, and a licensed mortgage originator needs to be registered with a national mortgage lending service, something like that. There's this national registry. And so you can't just like float from state to state. And you can't just, there's a lot of things you can't do anymore. So I think it'd be great to go in, buy these Boomer businesses sell them owner finance, then sell the note.
Interesting.
Yeah. So instead of going in and setting up, so say it's let's say it's like a property. Say I buy a property for cheap and I turn around and sell it to somebody on payments, and I can raise the price pretty high because it's on payments, and I can charge them high interest because I give them a low down payment. And so just throwing out numbers from, and none of these numbers even apply anymore because um, the entire market has changed. Now that after COVID, the taxes are so high on some of the properties that I used to buy super cheap for taxes. I used to buy a property for $3,000 or $5,000. Well, in that same, and then I would turn around and sell it for $15,000, and I just say, look, it's only 12, it's only 500 down, so you got to pay 12% because it's 500 down. It's really cheap down payment. Well, if you put a bigger down payment, I can give a lower interest rate, which kind of goes along with Dodd-Frank and all those. They don't want you just charging huge interest rates. They don't want you giving adjustable rate mortgages. They want you to give nice, clean, regular, well understood mortgages to where people who are buying really understand what they're buying. Well, if you're putting a low down payment, you got to pay a high interest rate. That's just the way it goes in that kind of a lending. So Dodd-Frank and the Truth in Lending Act only apply to housing. They don't apply to a business loan.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So like a laundromat or a vending business, like a vending business where the fella is in his 50s or 60s and he owns 20 or 50 vending machines in a town where he's already negotiated the spot in front of Walmart. So he's got plenty of traffic, or he's already negotiated the spot for his water machine and he has 20 water machines throughout Phoenix. So he's got like all over Phoenix, he's got all these spots. They're already negotiated their leases. The equipment's already paid for. He's already making a certain amount of money every month. And so then it just becomes buying his cash flow and turn around and financing that cash flow to somebody else. Well, then it's a note. It's a mortgage. It's a note. And that note can be sold to somebody else.
And then typically, how much are you selling the note to a note buyer for?
It depends. There's so much that goes into that. And that's one of the things I'm going to learn at this convention.
Okay.
There's a ton that goes into how to underwrite what the value of a note is, how to value a note. And so a lot of it goes into what the yield is. So say we were talking about 12%. Say you've got a house or a piece of land that you've sold for $25,000 at 12%. That's really $33,000. So this 12%, that's the yield. That's the coupon amount. Well, actually, the yield becomes if they buy it for less than, say, there's $25,000 that's still owed. That's the unpaid principal balance. That's the UPB, unpaid principal balance. And so if you got $25,000 that's still owed on it at a 12%, well, the coupon amount is that 12% in between. It's amortized, so it's in between the $25,000 and the $33,000. So you got $8,000. That's the yield. Well, if they can buy it, that's the coupon amount. If they can buy it for less than the UPB, then they have a higher yield. So it kind of becomes a lot of negotiation. There's one package I'm trying to sell right now. I've been talking to a buyer about it, and we had it sold at 55%. So I'd actually had it sold really, really low. And so 55% is way low. It's way, way, way low. But there's a ton that goes into it. The underwriting is incredibly loose, which means that the buyers, you don't have their social, you don't have a FICO score, you didn't do a credit score on them. And so that means that the value of what they think that the buyer is actually going to pay with their assurity, their security of what the buyer is going to pay, the likelihood that they're going to pay is pretty low. So that lowers the value of the entire package of the notes. So that, like I said, there's a lot that goes into it, and that's what we're going to go learn this next week.
So on that, let's say you went back and got the social security of all the buyers. Would that increase the value of it, or only if the social security, or only if the credit score is high for each one?
I think it's only if the credit score is high.
So you might be better off not having the numbers for some of them.
Yeah, pretty much. It might drive down the value if their credit's that bad.
So then the other part you were kind of mentioning, if there is churn, having a manager kind of fill it in with new buyers and stuff like that. I wonder if that adds value to the note.
It depends on it depends on who's buying it. Some people don't want any of that churn. They don't want any of that. So it depends on who's buying. Say you got a buyer, they really want to buy these contract for deed portfolio. They're going to look at it and they're going to think, okay, this is like a cheap apartment building. So it all comes down to what's their appetite and what do they think is cheap and what do they think is good. So if they think it's basically like a cheap apartment building, okay, I can buy for 350,000 these 8 properties and they make $4,500 a month. So they'll start, they'll do a little math in their head and they'll figure out if they think it's worth it or not. And then they'll figure out what the value is from the amount of income. So what I'm saying is these businesses are the same thing. They're cash flow businesses. So
Right.
you take a cash flow business and you see, I don't want to operate these businesses either. I think what you were kind of saying before is you'd rather own the building than own the laundromat inside the building, right?
Yeah, and my thinking of it is I've started and failed many businesses. And then every uh, house or building that I've purchased so far is still standing.
Yeah,
And so I think it takes more to collapse a house, especially when it has insurance, than it does to collapse a business.
that's a good point.
Um, but that doesn't mean there isn't still great money in it.
Yeah. See, I see it more on the flip side, just getting it, selling it on payments. And especially when you sell it on payments at a high interest rate, because if it's a high cash flow business, you can sell it to this person at a large amount, a kind of a high valuation and an interest rate on top of that. So you take the cash flow of the business and you come up with a valuation of the business. And you say, well, this worth this much. Then you throw the interest rate on top of that because you say, well, I'm owner financing the business for you. So I'm giving you the loan for the valuation amount, plus I'm giving you the loan. So there's interest on it. So now you've created this high value. You've created a mortgage. You've created a note.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it'd be cool to see the numbers all laid out for a specific business. So one of the things you can do in real estate is because you're selling owner finance, it almost adds more value. So all of a sudden, let's say you could charge double for a lot.
Yeah.
With a business, if you try charging double, it's all based off the cash flow of the business. And so, whereas with the land, they'll just pay extra out of pocket. So it's, yeah, I wonder how the numbers end up working out with all that.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see because, like you said, the cash flow creates the valuation of the business.
Right.
And then you say, well, I'll sell it to you for the valuation, but I'm giving you the loan. So yeah, I don't know if it would double. That doesn't sound like it would. Like say you got a laundromat and it makes, the $100,000 per year and you're gonna sell it for the $100,000 or the $100,000 valuation. So whatever the cap rate on a laundromat in that city is, you have to figure out that and figure out the total value. See, whenever you go putting the valuation on it, that's what increases it, kind of like that's the multiplier that you're talking about. I think that's the
Right.
multiplier that you're talking about. So because it's scarce for somebody to be able to, they can't get traditional mortgage, they can't get a traditional financing. So they're going to have to go with you and owner finance. So they're willing to pay more as the base rate and a high interest rate, right?
Right.
Because they just don't have any other access.
Whereas with the business, let's say I have a laundromat and it only nets 1,000 a month, and I'm selling probably to Bobby down the street or whatever. He really wants to run it. Um, if I'm selling my business, how much of that 1,000 a month do I want to get paid for it? And how much does Bobby need to keep in order to run it? And then if you're stepping into the middle of that transaction and buying from me, selling to him, but then selling the note for half, it means you need to be buying the note for less than half, unless there's an easy way to add value to the business, which is what you were doing to the properties.
Yeah, for sure. And see, I would be basically like buying out the business. and then selling on owner finance. So I wouldn't have a note on the business. I would create a note on the business and sell the note.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I basically just selling the debt to somebody else for them to collect.
I feel like with real estate, there's a lot of the value just in doing that transaction. By creating the note, you're creating value.
Yeah.
With business, I don't know if creating the note does create value. I feel like there need to be other creative value adds for you to get the most profit out of the amount of work you're doing for it.
Yeah, that's altogether possible. Well, one of the other big things about this is that if a lot of people do get foreclosed on, if the market does go down, everybody loses their credit.
Right.
And so your buyers, your amount of customers goes through the roof. See, right now everybody has good credit. It seems like there's tons of people that have had good credit for a long time because there's been a good, even with the pandemic, you could still make your bills because there was a lot of stimulus.
Right.
See, in 2008, the stimulus went all to the banks.
That makes sense.
And so people didn't get stimulus. People got foreclosed, cars gone, lost their jobs, had to move to different towns, move into a family, all that kind of stuff. And so, of course, this is depending on if it all goes to hell in a handbasket again. But if it goes that same sort of way, everybody loses their credit. And so if you're a person who sells to customers that don't have credit, like owner finance or like buy here, pay here car dealers,
right?
When everybody loses their credit, you have way, way, way more customers all of a sudden.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it moves all of the buyers to a different part of the market. Instead of everybody going to nice licensed mortgage brokers, they're going to some guy that has 2 houses and he's selling them owner finance. And hey, if you don't like the deal, go to somebody else because there's nobody else that's going to work with you but me and the other shady guy down the alley.
Right.
And I mean, I'm being very stereotypical there, but it sort of gets like that. But I'm trying to get the point across that if you're servicing that part of the market, whenever everything crashes, your numbers go way up.
Yeah.
Just the amount of customers you have.
And the amount of product that's available for you.
Yep. All right. Well, you want to wrap it up? You got anything else fun to talk about?
I think that's about it.
We're going to have a good time in Arizona.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Okay. All right. I'm going to sign off for now. Aloha, y'all.